Myst, the Book of Donnie continues with Video 12, as read by the bathroom reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who says it is right and proper to mass deport illegals, as well as to deport illegals mass. The great boat glided slowly around the curve of the river, then slid beneath the bridge, Rojethe's house directly ahead of it. In tunnels that ran parallel to the waterway, beneath and to either side of it, two teams of slaves pulled on the great ropes, 4 to a rope, dragging the boat along, the occasional spillage of water cascading down over them from the partially sealed slot above their heads. Silently they strained, maintaining the even walking pace that kept the boat in motion, while behind each team a single steward jogged along, carried in a sturdy 4-man palanquin. Up above, the boat eased its way beneath the massive walls of Jethe Rojethe's house, and into the central space. As it did, the slaves abruptly reversed direction, moving with practiced ease. For an instant the great ropes were slack, and then they took the strain once more, slowing the boat smoothly to a standstill. Exhausted, most of the slaves fell silently to the floor, even as a number of them secured the ropes. Up above, 4 men, wearing official cloaks and pendants of office, stepped out onto the unswept marble, surprised to find no one there to greet them.
"Rojethe,"
one of them called, looking to his companions and frowning.
"Jethe, Rojethe."
A door opened on the far side of the concourse, and a figure stumbled out, a scarecrow of a man, wearing stained and ragged clothing, his hair unkempt. Slowly it came toward them, limping and hopping by turns. Closer, they saw it was indeed a man.
"Rojethe,"
the first messenger queried, astonished by the sight that met his eyes. But the disheveled-looking figure did not answer. Instead, he turned and looked about him squintingly, as though he could not understand who he was or what he was doing there. His face was smeared with dirt and what looked like tears, and his hair hung in clumps.
"Rojethe, what has happened here? Have you been attacked?"
The scarecrow laughed and hopped, its eyes flickering from side to side in a manic, feverish fashion.
"Rojethe,"
it said parrot-like.
"I am Rojethe."
Again the chief messenger glanced to his companions. Then he took a long silver tube from his cloak and offered it to the scarecrow.
If you are Jethre Rojethe, then I am commanded by the king, Roe Rodan, to place this official edict in your hands."
Rojethe took the tube and stared at it, blinking and squinting, incomprehension in his eyes.
"Row,"
he said quietly, then, enjoying the game,
"Row, row, row, row."
"Gentlemen."
The 4 men turned as one, to face another, younger man, pallid and clearly ill, yet neatly dressed, his hair combed back, his manner apparently quite normal.
"Forgive my father," the young man said, approaching them, "but he is not himself. There is a sickness."
The 4 men looked to each other, concerned.
"A plague, it seems,"
Adra went on, enjoying the discomfort of the king's men.
"There is no defense against it. Already many here have died."
At that the 4 men blanched. Quickly they went into a huddle, discussing the matter in a low, urgent murmur. There were nods of agreement, and then their spokesman turned to Adra once again.
"Our task here is fulfilled, Rojethe's son. The king's message has been safely and properly delivered. Therefore, there is no need for us to stay. We are certain your father will obey the king's instructions to the fullest."
Adra looked beyond them to where his father stood, as if frozen, staring at the silver tube in his hand, as if his eyes had been glued to the sight.
"It will find you,"
Adra said solemnly, wiping the perspiration from his brow.
"Wherever you run to."
"That's the prophecy,"
one of them said in a harsh whisper, but the others quickly hushed him, even as the first of them stepped back on board the boat. Quickly the others followed. The chief messenger stared at Aedra, then raised his hands and clapped them together. There was a moment's delay, an awkward moment, and then the boat began to move. Aedra watched them leave, then, walking around the central pool, stepped up to his father and took the tube from his hand. For a moment he stood there, feeling the sunlight on his face and arms, and wondered whether he would ever experience that again. Then he cracked open the tube and took the sealed message from within. It was as he'd feared. The king had ordered that all of the Dani, including the Arotante, be chained up and brought back to the capital to be tried in secret for their heresies. Rolling the scroll up again, Aedra slipped it back in the tube, capped it, then, smiling bleakly, tossed it into the water. So much for kings and edicts, so much for heresies. They were all equal now, masters and servants, Tarani and Relaima. Death would come for them all, whatever cloak they wore or did not wear, whatever their eyes could see or not see. He looked to his father, saddened. His brother Hader was already dead, taken in his bed, and now Jethe Rojethe had gone, leaving in his place this fool in his disheveled clothes, this babbling madman with his staring eyes and sickly flesh. He reached out, taking his father's hand, then slowly led him back across the square and through the door inside to where his deathbed waited. The long day passed, and as the sun began to set, Atreus climbed the steps up out of the darkness of the slaves' quarters, and, his Dani lenses pulled down to protect his eyes, crossed the sunlit lawn and up into the silent house. After the meeting with Catherine and Aedra, he had walked for some while, eaten up by the thought that this was all his fault. This whole tragedy had been caused by his impetuosity. He kept seeing old Turgon's face, telling him to burn the books and seal up the chambers again, but he had known better. He walked and walked, then, after a time, feeling much calmer and knowing that there was nothing else for him to do, he had returned to the infirmary and carried on his work tending to the sick. There Catherine had come to him and, holding him briefly, had told him of Rojethe's death. Aedra, meanwhile, slept. A milder form of the fever settled on him. Now, as he climbed the long, curving steps to the room he shared with Catherine, Atreus wondered what was left for him to do here. Exhausted as he was, he saw it clearly. This world was dying, and there was nothing they could do now but alleviate the discomfort of some of these poor wretches in their final hours. So much for his great plan of unifying Dani and Tarani. It was as Aedra had said, what happens, happens, and what are a man's petty plans in the face of that? For the first time in his life, he almost believed in fate, yet still a small part of him argued against it. Life surely had no meaning unless a man was free to choose his fate, to mold it and fashion it according to his nature. "I am too tired," he said aloud as he stepped into his room. "Too tired and befuddled." He peeled off his shirt and threw it down, then turned, hearing a noise behind him in the room. "Merim?" His young helper was slumped over the bed. The sight made him start. Then he remembered. They were not affected. Yes, but she is not Dani. He hurried across, worried now. What if she was ill of the sickness? But her soft snoring made him understand. She was not ill, she was asleep. Atreus smiled and made to turn away, then stopped, a strange little ripple going up his spine. The slave child Merim had been tending was awake, his dark eyes staring straight at Atreus. They blinked, then looked away. "Child?" At once the boy slipped under the covers, hiding himself. "It's all right," Atreus said, walking round to the head of the bed. "I won't harm you, child. I promise." But the child would not emerge again. He trembled beneath the sheets like a trapped young animal. "Hersha," Atreus decided. "I shall bring Hersha. He will know what to do." Then, turning, he hurried from the room, hope mounting in him for the first time in all that long, dark day. While Hersha talked quietly to the child, distracting him, Catherine took the sample from his arm. It was not that the child fought to evade the needle, it was just that he was trembling so much that it was hard for Catherine to keep the needle still. Merrim had to help her keep that emaciated limb from shaking itself apart. Then it was done, and, while Catherine put the sample into her case and clicked it shut, Merrim reached out and clasped the slave child to her, hugging him tightly. Slowly the trembling ceased. Slowly the child calmed down again. Merrim smiled and looked to Hersha, who was staring at her in astonishment. "What is his name?" she asked.
His name?
"Yes, he has one, surely. Or did the Tirani simply number them all?"
"No, his name is Uta."
"Uta." Merrim moved back a little, trying to look into the boy's face, but however she moved, he would position his face so it could not be properly seen. "Even in one so young, the conditioning is strong," Catherine said, seeing what was going on. "It will take some while to change that."
"But at least now it can be changed," Atris said.
"At least the Rel Yima have some hope."
"And the others?"
Merrim asked. "We shall know soon," Catherine answered. "I have taken a sample of Rojethe's blood, and of Aedra's too. If we can discover what it is that allows some to survive this and makes others succumb, then perhaps I might find something that will help."
"Then go at once,"
Atris said. As Catherine hurried from the room, Merrim turned back to the child.
"Well, young Uta, you give us all hope."
But the child said nothing. As he had done all his infant life, Uta looked away, his body hunched into itself as he tried not to be seen. Horan Rojader lay in his great bath, on his back, where death had found him, his mouth open in an "oh" of surprise. His parley stewards had fled that afternoon, when news had first come of the sickness that was sweeping the south. But they ran in vain, for they had long ago been caught by the strange bacteria that now crawled and multiplied unseen inside them all. Yet death, for now, moved at a walking pace, or, to be more accurate, at the pace of a slowly gliding boat. 8 days was the gestation period for the sickness. 8 days before a mild disorder became fierce cramps, and then, with a suddenness that often killed, something much worse. Master and slave succumbed, and the parley, first to flee, were taken in the fields, or in some well-trimmed field of exotic blooms, their groans alone distinguishing them from the silent acquiescence of those that they had once beaten and killed. Across the whole land the sickness was spreading now. News of it had come to the capital, where Roé Rodan, uncertain yet how serious it was, took advice from ancients who had known no illness in their long and worthless lives.
"If slaves are dying," the old men counseled, "then bring in more from the ages. Replace their numbers."
It seemed a simple and effective policy, but the new slaves were not trained. Could they be counted on to be obedient?
"No matter," the old men said. "Slaves are slaves. They will obey."
But some did not, and as word of the sickness spread among the Relima, so 1 or 2 among their number took it upon themselves to exact swift vengeance on those who had afflicted them with years of misery. One such was a slave named Emer. As his overseer raised his whip to beat Emer, the slave grabbed the parley's wrist and, twisting it, snapped the bone. There was a cry of pain, silenced in an instant, and as the others stared at the fallen corpse of their tormentor, so Emer looked about him, allowing his eyes to see what they had never properly focused on before. "Come," he said, gesturing to them, and, obedient as slaves, they followed. Many more days passed, and slowly the pattern became clearer. Many of the Relima were dying, but only those who were too weak to survive the first full shock of the sickness. The majority survived, and within weeks were on their feet again. Among the Turani and the Parli, however, the death rate was higher. Some, like Aedra, survived, but a great number succumbed. Thus it was that Aedra had buried his father, mother, and 3 of his sisters. He was sitting alone in the great library, writing, when Hersha came to him. At first Hersha had found it uncomfortable, one might even say frightening, coming into the main house. Old he was, and well-read, yet he was still Relyima, and from childhood had been taught to be invisible. Now he had a new fate. "Aedra!" Aedra looked up, a slightly glazed expression in his eyes. At Atris's suggestion he had begun to write down his feelings, hoping thus to purge them, or at least to understand what he was undergoing.
"Yes, Hersha?"
"Forgive me for disturbing you, but important news has come. There is to be a meeting."
"A meeting?"
Of the Relyima, at least of their leaders. I have been asked to attend. It is to be held at the Great Mound in Gelhala district." Aedra stared at the old man, then set his pen aside. There was something strange about Hersha's manner.
"Hersha, what is it you're not telling me?"
The old man looked down. "You see right through me, Renyaloth." That use of his nickname among the Relyima, the sickly one, told him he had been right. Whatever this was, Hersha was finding it difficult telling him. Aedra knew he would have to coax it from him.
"So what is the purpose of this meeting?"
Hersha's ancient head tucked itself even deeper into his chest, old reflexes taking control. "They mean to overthrow the masters."
"Ah."
It ought not to have been a shock. After all, what was there to overthrow now that many of them were dead or dying? But for the Relyima to think like this was unheard of, and Aedra found himself not surprised but actually astonished by the news.
"Is this a warning, Hersha? Are you telling me that I should leave Tarani? Go back with Atris, possibly?"
Hersha's eyes flicked up briefly before he averted them again. Aedra saw how he steeled himself to speak again, and when he did it was another shock. "I want you to come with me," Hersha said quietly, "to speak to them. Persuade them not to act too rashly."
"Speak to them?"
Aedra sat there, astonished.
"And say what?" he thought. "That we treated you abominably, but not to punish us for that?"
He sighed.
"Let me consider it, Hersha, and let me speak with Atris. Then I shall tell you whether I will come with you or not."
Hersha gave a little bow. "As you wish, Renyaloth." And, without another word, the old man turned and scuttled away, hunched into himself, his eyes glancing from side to side, as if he expected at any moment to be waylaid by stewards for his impertinence. "Any luck?" Atris asked, looking over Catherine's shoulder at the page she was writing. "None at all," she answered, finishing the sentence she had been writing, then looking up at him. "Not that it matters now. If what Hersha has heard is true, then there is not a corner of this land that has not been ravaged by the sickness." Atris nodded somberly. "It seems almost like a judgment." Catherine hesitated, as if about to say something, then nodded. "Aedra certainly thinks so." She looked past Atris to where Uta sat in the corner chair, hunched into himself, trying not to be noticed. "I just wonder how the Relyima will cope. There's food for now, but when that runs out, what then?" "They grew it," Atris said. "Yes, but that was when there was someone there to organize them. You've seen them, Atris. Without someone to tell them what to do, they're lost. They're not mindless, I know that, but they sometimes act as if they are. Our problem is getting round that conditioning before they starve. We need to get them to make decisions for themselves." Atris nodded, but both of them knew that it was easier said than done. How did one change not just a lifetime's habits, but long millennia of custom? Yet there must be one or two of these Rel Yima, who could be used, molded, to shape the new society that must emerge from this disaster. But where would they be found? Aedra, it seemed, had the answer.
Atris, he said, coming into the room, I have a problem. The slave leaders are to have a great meeting, it seems, tonight at sunset at the great mound in Galhala.
Is that far from here?
2 hours' walk at most.
And what is to be discussed at this meeting?
The overthrow of the masters, Aedra smiled bleakly, by which I take it they mean the wholesale slaughter of the survivors.
You think they'd do that? Atris asked, surprised.
Aedra nodded. Some have already done so, killing Parlee and masters both. They did not wait, it seems, for the sickness to descend.
And is Hersha to attend this meeting?
Yes, and he has asked me to go with him and speak to them.
So will you go?
If you will come with me, Atris. I know them, true, but I am no speaker, not as you are.
And you think I can convince them to act decently?
If anyone can.
Atris considered a moment. All right, I shall come with you, but first I must return to Donnie. There is something there I need.
Will you be long, Atris?
Atris smiled. No, not long. 3 hours, maybe 4 at most. He turned, looking to the boy. Uta, come, my little shadow. The boy jerked. Then, burying his head into his neck, he stood.
Until then, Aedra said.
Until then. Roé Rodan stood at the edge of the high platform and looked outward. Beneath him the land of Tirani stretched away into the distance, swathed in the late afternoon mist. From this height it seemed eternal and unchanged, but he knew better. There was not a household down there that had not been touched.
The bricks alone will stand on that day, and the blind shall be given eyes.
He said the words softly, almost in a whisper. Roadarin, his chief adviser, had read them to him only that morning from the ancient book, and now the old man was dead.
So they were true, after all,
he said, and almost laughed, remembering how excited they had all been when they had heard of the tragedy that struck Donnie, and how they had thought that that was what had been prophesied. Well, now they knew, but knowing did not help them any. From far below there came a hammering. He turned, staring down into the depths, and saw the great host at the valley gate, and knew, without needing to be told, that this was the rabble of new slaves they had brought in from the ages.
So be it,
he said, no longer caring about his own personal fate. What did it matter if he died? He was king of nothing now. But others would not let him succumb to fate. As he stood there, 2 of his ancient counselors ventured out onto the platform, clearly afraid of the great drop. Their eyes went from Roé Rodan to the platform's edge constantly, while they themselves stayed close to the top of the steps.
You must come, my lord, one of them said, beckoning to him as if to a child. Your boat is awaiting you, the other added, if we leave now.
He sighed, then walked across to them. It was no use arguing. Besides, maybe he was wrong. Maybe once this rabble was dispersed, they could rebuild. From what he'd heard, many of the slaves were still alive, and they certainly would need organizing.
All right,
he said, letting them usher him down the steps and through his room, out onto the narrow bridge. He was halfway across when some instinct told him to stop and turn, and as he looked back, he saw himself, in memory, greeting the stranger.
I liked him, he realized. I really rather liked him.
Master,
the old man said, trying to hurry him along.
Master, we must be gone from here.
He shook his head, trying to clear it of the memory, but still he could see them both, cloaked against the coolness of the early morning, and smiled. It made no sense to like the man after all that had happened, and yet he did.
I see you, Atris.
Then, conscious of the old men fussing all about him, he hurried on toward the waiting boat. Atris stepped from the ruins, the heavy pack on his back, and, adjusting his lenses, turned to look as Oma and Isel stepped out behind him. They too carried the big framed backpacks. Behind them came the slave child Uta, and finally Master Tarragon. As Atris turned back, Tamon hurried up.
Atris, something's happening. There are great plumes of smoke in the distance.
They hurried across to the chairlift. From its upper platform, a clear view of Tirani could be had. Atris scanned the distance, then looked back. Turgan was watching him.
"You must listen to me, Atris," the old man said. "You did not before, and look what happened. We must pull our people out and destroy the books. Yes, and seal up the temple, too. For if the Reliyama find the temple, they will link through and destroy us all."
Atris nodded. "I hear you, Master Targon, but I must take this one chance to make amends." He looked at Tamon. "Master Tamon, if you do not hear from us in 2 days, you will do as Master Targon says. You will dismantle the chairlift and return to Dani, destroying the linking books. Then you will seal the great temple."
"But Atris—"
"No arguments, Master Tamon. Turgon is right. We do not know how the Reliyama will act, and we cannot risk our people. 2 days is sufficient to do what I must do. If I fail, I shall have failed by then, and Dani will be in danger. Indeed, it might be well to post lookouts." Tamon frowned, clearly dismayed by this turn of events. Even so, he bowed his head obediently.
"I shall do as you say."
"Good." Atris reached out, taking his old friend's hands. "I hope it will not come to that."
"And I,"
Tamon said.
"Good luck, Atris, and hurry back."
Atris smiled. "I shall do my best, Master Tamon." Then, signaling to Isel and Oma and young Uta to join him on the chair, he climbed aboard, his eyes going outward to the tall dark plumes that climbed the distant sky. Part 7. Descending the great ladder of time, we see 4 faces, the faces of 4 women. Aged and dead, the first 2 are. The third, a dreamer. The last, a teacher. From the visions of the Jo Irima. Canto 157. The sun was just setting as Hersha and his party made their way up the long, sloping ramp and onto the great mound of Gahala. There the Reliyama were gathered, over 20,000 strong, the uniformity of their dress and their shaven heads emphasized by the utter silence in which they stood. A canopy of golden silk had been placed at the center of that massive amphitheater, and in the last rays of the sun 4 banners, purest black, hung limply. Beneath that canopy a smaller group was gathered. It was toward them that Hersha now headed, Adra and Atris behind him. The others, Oma, Isel, Uta, and 2 other Reliyama, several paces back.
"Hersha,"
one of them said, as the old man stepped up onto the platform, a greeting that was quickly taken up by the others there.
"Friends," Hersha said, "I have come at your summons."
"And brought others with you, I see,"
another of them said, stepping out from where he had been standing at the back. Hersha looked about him for clarification, clearly not recognizing the man who had spoken.
"I am Emer,"
the man said, hesitantly yet at the same time belligerently.
"I am leader of the Reliyama of Rotanak."
Hersha frowned.
"I thought Rafis was their leader."
"He was,"
Emer said humorlessly,
"and now I am."
Atris, looking on from just beneath the platform, saw how all but Hersha found it hard to meet each other's eyes. It was as Catherine had said. It was hard for these men, even the boldest among them, to throw off their conditioning. They could not change overnight, yet they might break altogether under the strains of the new demands on them, and if they did, then there would almost certainly be bloodshed.
"Who are these strangers?"
Emer asked. Hersha turned to one of the others, an old slave, and asked,
"Have I to answer to this newcomer, Badu?"
Badu looked uncomfortable.
"It might be best, Hersha. Adra we know, of course, and welcome as a friend. But the others?
Our friends also, Hersha said. They are Arotanti. There were looks of surprise at that, for all there had taken Atris and his fellows for masters, but Emer was not convinced.
Are these not the ones who went to see the Turani king?
That is so, Hersha answered.
Then they have no place here at this gathering.
Emer looked about him threateningly, then raised his voice. At the sound of it, many of those closest to him cowered.
Hear me, brother Relyima. No friend of the Turani can be a friend of ours.
That is not so, Hersha began, but Emer spoke over him.
It is said that they made a pact.
That is untrue, Hersha said. Emer stepped forward, confronting Hersha.
Are you calling me a liar, old man?
Hersha dropped his gaze. You heard wrong. That is all. No pact was made. These are our friends.
So they would have you believe,
Emer said disdainfully. He turned his back on Hersha.
Myself, I will not hear them. Just as others would not see you, Emer.
The speaker stepped from the darkness at the back of the platform, his thin cloak rustling about him. Gat! The whispered name rippled through the thousands gathered in the growing darkness. Gat! The ancient stopped amid those gathered at the center. He was older even than Hersha, and his hair was white and long. Hersha had mentioned his name reverently many times, but Atris had always assumed that the man was legend, buried long ago. Yet here he was, as large as life, a strong, vigorous-looking old man.
Well, Emer?
As Gat turned to face the younger man, Atris realized with a shock that he was blind. Emer had hunched into himself, his head tucked down like a beaten dog.
But they are not Relyima,
he grumbled.
Maybe so, the ancient said. Yet we would do well to listen to what they have to say.
From Emer's expression, he clearly did not like this, but he was not going to argue with Gat. He gave a grudging nod.
Good. Then light the lamps and let's begin. There is much to be said this night.
In the glare of the flickering lamps, real lamps, burning in cressets, Gat stepped to the front of the platform and began to speak.
I remember my father and my mother, and I can recall quite vividly the day that I was taken from them. Blind as I am, I can still see the pain in their eyes. Turani did that. Turani and the servants of Turani. And I vowed that day that I would never forgive them for what they did, that I would fight them to the last, here inside me.
Gat tapped his chest, then paused, his blind eyes searching about him.
Like you, I have pretended to be nothing, to bleed and suffer and be silent, to exist for work and yet not to exist at all, to live without love or recognition. All this I did, not choosing to do so, but because I had no choice and found that the force of life in me was stronger than the desire for death. It is that which makes a slave, that choice, when all other choices are denied, to carry on.
Gat leaned toward them, lowering his voice slightly, as if speaking personally to each one of them.
But now the masters are gone, it seems, swept away, and we are free.
He smiled blindly.
Look about you. Dare to look about you. See those who have suffered with you. Meet their eyes and see the pain there that all here have endured.
Atris, looking about him, saw how some of the Relyima risked tiny glances at their fellows, but most looked down, ashamed, still locked in the prison of habit. Gat, blind as he was, seemed to comprehend this, and now his voice softened.
Oh, it is hard, brothers. Perhaps the hardest thing we have ever had to do, to shake off our bonds and be ourselves, not some other man's thing. But we must learn to use our eyes anew, to see each other and thus cease to be Relyima. It will take time, perhaps even a long time, but we must make that journey to seeing, to being seen. And while we do, we must be patient. Patient because it would be unwise to act rashly and hot-bloodedly. That path can bring us only more grief, more injustice. The past is the past. We must let go of the hatred and bitterness we feel. And so I counsel you, my brothers, to look and see and be calm.
And with that, Gat turned away, stepping back into the darkness. Next to speak was Emer. He came to the front of the platform, self-conscious and ill at ease, now that he must address the multitude.
"Brothers," he began, "Gat speaks wisely. Like us, he has suffered. Like us, he has known what it is to be nothing. I say that no man who has not suffered that can speak of it."
As he said the words, Emer turned, looking pointedly at Atris and Aedra and their party.
"And so we listen to Gat, and now you listen to Emer, who suffered and was nothing, who, like you, is Rel Yima. And I say that I, too, remember the day I was taken from my home. I remember how my father fought the Parlee and was killed for his pains. And I, too, took a vow that day."
Emer paused. As he spoke, his voice had grown louder and more confident. Now he seemed to swell with every word, a burning anger behind his every utterance, an anger, Atris saw, that touched many in the great crowd.
"Gat says the past is past. But is that really so? Are all the masters dead? No, some leave, and while they live, they will not be tempted to will they not be tempted to return to how things were? Will they not bring men from other ages to subdue us once again? Who here would dare to say no?"
He paused, a snarl on his features now.
"The truth is this. We know that the Tyranni are. We know what they are too. The scars on our bodies tell us. So too the chains in our heads. Gat speaks of learning to use our eyes. He is right. But first we must see the threat the Tyranni still pose. Gat says we are free, but we are not free. Not until the last Tyranni child is dead."
There was a murmur from the gathering at that, both shocked surprise and vehement agreement, and Atris, hearing it and looking about him, understood at once. Whatever Gat had said about learning to be themselves, this was the single issue that divided the Rel Yima. Emer spoke on, a cold vehemence in his words now, their former anger transformed into a chilling certainty.
"If any of you still doubt, look back. Remember what was done to you, not once or twice, but every day for all your lives. Unseen we were. Well, I for one will pluck their eyes from their heads."
And with that he turned and strode into the darkness, leaving behind him a crowd that now seethed and murmured, like a great soup that had been brought almost to the boil.
"May I speak?"
Badu had stepped forward, meaning to address the gathering. Now he turned, looking to the speaker. It was Aedra.
"Aedra?"
Badu said, surprised and perhaps embarrassed after what had just been said.
"Let him speak,"
Gat said from the darkness.
"Unless Emer wishes to pluck out the eyes of one who is our friend."
There was fierce murmuring at that. Badu looked down, then nodded.
"Thank you,"
Aedra said, stepping to the front of the platform. He looked about him, clearly nervous, then began, his eyes pleading for the Rel Yima to listen.
"Emer is right. My people do not deserve to live. They were cruel and self-obsessed. No words of mine can wash away the shame I feel."
He turned, looking to Gat.
"Indeed, I would give my own eyes were it to help."
He turned back.
"And Emer is right about one other thing. Were enough Tyranni to survive, they would surely try to make things as they were, for they know no different, and even this great tragedy, this judgment as it seems, will not make them see. Which is to say, I understand you, Emer. I cannot feel precisely what you feel, for I have not suffered as you have suffered. Yet I can imagine how it feels, and, imagining it, I can understand the desire for vengeance that burns in you."
Aedra paused.
"I understand it, yet part of me holds out against that path. We have had enough of the violence, enough of kill or be killed. Our way must lie in another direction. Besides, there are more important issues to be debated. How, for instance, how are we to feed the Rel Yima, and how should we direct their energies now that Tyranni has fallen?"
This was too much for Emer. Stepping out into the center of the platform, he began to harangue Aedra.
"What has that to do with you, Tyranni? We shall feed ourselves, yes, and choose our own leaders. You think to control us with clever words, no doubt, but I for one am not fooled.
A fool is never fooled, Gat said, walking across to Adra's side. Or so he claims, but you, Emer, speak ill of one who has often proved his worth. Adra's right. We must think of more than killing. We must consider how our freedom should be used, not just now, but in the future also. Emer bristled. I say once more, destroy the tyranny, then we can go home. Home? Gat shook his head sadly. Do you not understand, Emer? This is our home. The question is, what are we to make of it? You have a plan? Emer sneered. Not I, Gat answered him, but I understand there is one here who might offer us a way to follow. Gat turned, looking in Atrus's direction. Atrus of Dawni, would you step forward now and speak to the Rel-Yima? Atrus stepped up, conscious of the watchful yet unwatching crowd surrounding him. Silent they were, like a great army of the dead. What has happened here is a great tragedy, he began. Many of your people have died, and many more will die before this scourge has passed. So it was in my own age of Dawni. Yet no two things are ever quite alike, and Dawni was not Tyranny. This world, which so bewitched me at first sight, I see now was corrupt and wicked, corrupted to the core by those given the responsibility to lead. As Adra said, its makers deserved their fate. But that was not so for Dawni. My world, or I should rightly say, my grandfather's world, was a world of order and fairness, as unlike to this as the rock is to the air. It was a world of fixed and certain laws where every man was treated with the respect and dignity he deserved. We had no slaves, no stewards. There were no beatings in our world, no deaths, unless by accident or natural cause. Each man was seen for what he was, and given recognition for his talents. So you say, Emer said, interrupting him, but I say you made a pact with the Tyranny. I say you meant to bring your people here and settle in Tyranny. Atrus shrugged. That is true, but... There, Emer said. What did I say? Turning away, he went to the edge of the platform. Well, brothers, are we to swap one set of masters for another? This is not mastery, Atrus exclaimed, unless you call it mastery of oneself. I do not wish to rule you, Emer, just give you guidance. So you say, but I say that we, Rel-Yima, will find our own way now. For too long have we listened to others and done what they have told us to do. Now it is our time, and we shall not be bound by masters' ways. It is not so. Emer turned back, his face scornful. Why should we listen to you, Atrus of Dawni? Because I have your interests at heart. Our interests or yours? Atrus stared at Emer, understanding suddenly that whatever he said, he would not convince this one. Emer was set against him, set against reason itself. And sadly, Emer was not the only one, for his fiery words had once more ignited the dark mass of humanity gathered there before them. He was about to turn and walk away, to take the books of law he had brought with him from Dawni and go home, when a figure moved past him to stand between himself and Emer. Emer half turned, sensing the presence of someone close beside him, then frowned. Boy! Atrus took a step toward the child, then stopped. Uta was trembling, yet there was something about his stance that warned Atrus not to interfere. The child had steeled himself to this. He was hunched into himself, his head tucked tightly against his chest, yet his voice sounded clearly in the sudden silence. You are wrong. Wrong? Emer twitched his head back as if someone had flicked him in the face, and then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Go away, child. Let the elders speak. You are wrong, Uta repeated, no stammer this time. Atrus is a friend. He found me when I was ill and nursed me. He carried me, not fearing for himself. But Emer simply sneered. Only because he knew he could not catch it. Not then, Hersha said. Uta is right. Atrus acted as a brother, not fearing for himself, and his people helped tend our ill. Uta looked up into the old man's face. Then, in a strange, incantatory tone, he said,
What ails the sickly child? What stranger comes? What words will follow him, spoken by sleeping tongues?
Utter silence followed the words. Atreus turned, sensing that something was happening in the crowd, and saw, to his astonishment, that many now were looking at the platform, staring in awe at the child, yes, and at himself too. "What is it?" Atreus asked, looking at Aedra. "What is going on?" But even Aedra, it seemed, did not know. One by one, the Rel Yima were dropping to their knees, an awed whisper spreading across the great arena. Up on the platform, Gat stepped past Atreus and raised his arms. Silence fell. "We have heard enough," he said, his voice trembling with a strange, inexplicable emotion. "It is decided. We shall learn this new law and embrace new ways. Emer, is it not so?" Atreus looked to Emer, expecting the man to argue, but Emer's head had dropped in defeat.
"It is so."